there, students. Welcome back to the Chapter 3 Epithelial Tissue lecture. I'm going to quickly review the different types of epithelial tissue with you, and then we're going to move on to learn about a glandular epithelium. So just real quick, remember how we've learned how to identify epithelial tissue? Remember, we use two terms in most cases. We refer to the number of layers in the tissue, and we also refer to the shape of the cells. So simple, remember, just means one layer of tissue, or sorry, not one layer of tissue, one layer of cells. And then stratified refers to several layers of cells, more than one layer of cells. So, if we look at some of the examples here, there is simple squamous, so one layer of cells, and the cells have a kind of fried egg shape, right? Or there is simple cuboidal, where the cells are cubed in shape, or cuboidal in shape. And one of the things they didn't do a very good job on this picture showing is that the nucleus, the simple cuboidal epithelium, is quite large and occupies the majority of the cell. There's simple columnar, where the cells are taller than they are wide, and just in general, what you'll find is that the nuclei are closer to the the basal surface rather than the apical surface of the cell. So they should kind of all line up in generally the same plane. There's stratified columnar, there's stratified squamous, and kind of the two oddballs, there's pseudostratified ciliated columnar, where the tissue appears as though it's stratified, but it's not, because each one of these cells is going to maintain a connection to the basement membrane. And then, of course, transitional, which doesn't fit any of the previous descriptors, and these cells can be mixed in their shape. There is one type of epithelial tissue that is missing from this review that we did cover, and that is stratified cuboidal. So you would have a number of cuboidal cells stacked on top of one another, and then you'd have a basement membrane here, and then of course the underlying connective tissue. So that's a quick review of what we did last time. You should be able to identify the tissues underneath a microscope, identify the type of tissue, identify what its function is, and identify one location in the body where you can find it. So we're going to switch topics now, and we're going to we're going to learn about the glands in the body. All of your glands in your body are made of epithelial tissue. The way in which the product is secreted might differ, but all of the glands have this in common, in that they are made of epithelial tissue cells. So we can classify them in a couple of main ways, and then there's one example that kind of is the oddball again. First of all, there are exocrine glands. And exocrine, think of the term exit. So they're secreting something onto a surface. So they're going to have a very specific structure where there's a main duct or a main passageway in the center, and that passageway will carry the secretion to the surface of something. It doesn't necessarily mean the surface of the body, not necessarily the outside of the body, although in some cases it is. It just means that the secretion goes on top of something. So, for instance, sweat glands, right? So those glands are going to secrete sweat onto the surface of your body. Lactiferous glands or milk glands will secrete milk onto the surface of the body. There are mucus glands that perhaps will secrete mucus onto the surface of your stomach, the inner lining of your stomach. Same with enzymes. Enzymes can be secreted onto the surface, the inner surface of the stomach, or inner surface of the small intestines, or the inner surface of the mouth. So exocrine glands secrete their product onto the surface of something. Where endocrine glands, endo means within, endocrine glands do not have a duct. They do not have a passageway that carries the secretion onto the surface of another structure. They're what we refer to as ductless. They're going to primarily be secreting hormones, and these hormones get taken up by the bloodstream and carried to other tissues elsewhere. So in that respect, these hormones are going to regulate and coordinate activities elsewhere in the body. So I'll just give you the example of the pituitary gland, for instance. This secretes, it's a gland that's found at the base of the brain, the inferior base of the brain, and secretes its product into the bloodstream and then acts on tissues in other areas of the body. So for instance, oxytocin is one of the hormones that induces labor or induces contractions of the uterus during childbirth, but it's secreted at the base of the brain. That hormone, oxytocin, then makes its way into the bloodstream and causes contractions of the uterus. The thyroid gland and the pancreas are also examples of endocrine glands. And then lastly, there are unicellular glands. They secrete mucus, and more specifically, they're just made of one single cell. So for instance, goblet cells, they can be found between epithelial cells that line the digestive or the respiratory tract. So let's have a couple of these. All right, so here would be a type of exocrine gland, and here would be an endocrine gland. So first, let's have a look at the cells. And you would have these cells here. And they're arranged around the central passageway, this duct in the center. And these cells you can identify as simple columnar. Look at their nuclei. Here would be the basement membrane. Look how close their nuclei are to the basement membrane. And then also look how their nuclei line up in generally the same plane. So that's an example of an exocrine gland. Whereas if we look at the picture on the right, that's an example of an endocrine gland. There are no ducts. Each one of these cells that you see here is secreting a product, but there aren't any ducts. That product, when it's secreted from these cells, is going to get taken up by tiny blood vessels and transported to other areas of the body. And then here you see a passageway, a duct, right? And here are the cells that make up or line the passageway. And this would be a simple columnar. Look at the nuclei kind of lining up in the same plane. And the gland itself is this structure called a goblet cell. And so that's going to secrete mucus onto the surface of this passageway, like this. Okay, so what we'll do now is we're going to focus on exocrine glands. And we're just going to have a real quick look at their shapes. You don't have to know each one of these shapes here, but I would like you to know the difference between simple glands and compound glands. So simple glands are shown here on the front, or on the top, and compound glands are found down here on the bottom. So simple glands are unbranched. Or if they do have branches, they attach directly to the main duct. So here's the main duct, and you see there are no branches. Sometimes that duct is curly. And here's the main duct in this gland. And it does branch, but it only has branches immediately off the main duct. There aren't further side branches off of those primary ducts. Sometimes those glands are bulbous at the end, so kind of end in this kind of balloon-like structure. But the point is that the simple glands are either unbranched or the branches attached directly to the main duct. And that's a major difference between simple glands and compound glands. If we look at these compound glands here, they're very highly branched. This would be the main duct, and then it would have like a primary duct and then a secondary duct. So they're much more extensively branched. So we call these compound glands. So just make sure you know the difference between the two. You do not need to know the different names of each one. So let's think about how these glands are going to secrete their product. It's the cells that are making the product, and the cells need to get that product out of themselves and into a main duct where those ducts can carry the secretion to the surface of something. So I've written down the examples here of the types of secretion or the methods of secretion. There's merocrine, apocrine, and holocrine. So let me show you or explain how they secrete their product in the next slide. It'll be a little bit more easily understood if we can look at it in pictorial form. So in merocrine secretion, what the cells are going to do is they're going to make the product. So the product is here. Let's just say this is sweat, right? And they package up that product in little vesicles, a secretory vesicle. And then those vesicles migrate to the cell membrane, and then the product, just the vesicles, gets dumped out on the other side. The cell remains intact so that it can continue to secrete its product. This is a little bit different than in apocrine secretion, where kind of the same thing happens. The cell makes the product, packages the product in vesicles, but when it comes time for the product to leave the cell, the entire apical surface of the cell ruptures and is lost with the secretion. So some cytoplasm is lost, but if you look, all the organelles still remain intact, so these cells can continue to secrete another time. And both of those two types of secretion are in stark contrast to what we call holocrine secretion. So think of holocrine as like the word whole, where the cell makes the product, but when it comes time for the cell to secrete its product, the entire cell ruptures. The whole cell dies, and everything on the inside of the cell then becomes the secretory product. So there would have to be another cell immediately waiting behind this in order to come on in and continue secretion, because the entire cell here is going to die. So it just secretes its product one time. And then moving on to just a slightly different topic, wrapping things up here. Let's talk about membranes. A membrane is made up of two types of tissue. A membrane is made of connective tissue and epithelial tissue. So now that we know about connective tissue and we learned about epithelial tissue, it makes sense at this point to cover membranes. This is why we didn't really cover membranes back when we covered connective tissue, because I wanted you guys to know about epithelial tissue and connective tissue first, so that you could understand what the components are of a membrane. So there are mucous membranes, and these are wet membranes. And these wet membranes usually have a connection to the exterior. So the mouth, for instance, is considered a mucous membrane. The nasal passages are considered mucous membranes. The vagina is lined in a mucous membrane. And the function of mucous membranes, as far as breathing, for instance, it will help with breathing. The entire respiratory tract needs to be slightly wet in order for gas exchange to occur properly. And if we're talking about the digestive system, for instance, that mucous membrane is going to secrete enzymes and kill some pathogens, but also trap pathogens in the mucus, and then not allow those pathogens to cause some sort of infection in the body. We learned about serous membranes early on in the semester, and remember, those are membranes that line the ventral body cavity. And remember that the parietal serous membranes, they line the cavity itself, and the visceral serous membranes cover the organs. So think about if we were to take the lungs out of the thoracic cavity, the thoracic cavity would be lined in a parietal serous membrane, and the lungs itself would be covered in a visceral serous membrane. These membranes secrete serous fluid. Remember, that's kind of like the oil you put in your car engine, so that when surfaces come in contact with one another, the friction is minimized. Damage does not occur. So if you take a deep breath, your lungs fill with air. They're coming in contact with the wall of the thoracic cavity, so your lungs are able to slide past the wall of the thoracic cavity without becoming damaged. There is the cutaneous membrane. This is the skin, and we're going to learn a little bit more about the skin this week. The cutaneous membrane is not wet. It's thick, dry, and water resistant. So if you think about your skin, and your skin is quite thick. On the surface, it's dry, and that helps to prevent not necessarily water entering the body, but helps prevent water loss. So your skin is kind of like this waxy membrane that prevents water loss, or prevents water from continuously leaking out of your body. So if this were the skin, for example, over here on the right, the pinkish layer right here, that would be stratified squamous. So a nice thick layer of epithelial tissue, and that's meant to prevent water loss from the underlying connective tissue. And then last week we learned about synovial membranes. These are membranes that we find lining the inner surface of joints. So if we look over at this picture here, the little inset is showing you that the picture on the right is a view inside of the joint capsule. This would be the cartilage on the proximal epiphysis of the femur. This would be the cartilage on the distal epiphysis of the femur, and the synovial membrane would be this pink line right here that you see, and it secretes synovial fluid. And synovial fluid, remember, is a slippery type of fluid, again, kind of oily, that nourishes cartilage and fills that entire joint capsule. Okay, so that's the short part 2 of our epithelial tissue lecture. This is the last part covering epithelial tissue.